disadvantage to popular catchphrases and slogans. And when I say popular catchphrases and slogans, I don't just mean contemporary ones, but also certain popular keywords that have been transmitted through centuries. Specifically, when it comes to spiritual traditions, one of these catchphrases, which in English they're referring to it as enlightenment, but there's a heap of misunderstanding. I am probably going to be contributing to that misunderstanding by even talking about the subject, but nevertheless, it is a subject that is worth investigating deeper into it. One of the major misunderstandings as far as enlightenment is concerned is the idea, first of all, that perhaps this is some condition of perfect knowledge or omniscience that has been perhaps reinforced by certain traditions such as the Buddhists or the Jains, who within certain circles they have talked about enlightenment in these terms. Mahavira is said to have declared his enlightenment as a condition of perfect omniscience. The same is the case with Gautama Buddha. So first let's get that delusion out of the way, that enlightenment is not a condition of perfect knowledge or omniscience. And I want you just to take a little bit of time and to contemplate on what exactly are the suggestions of this. Because if enlightenment is not a condition of perfect knowledge, then enlightenment itself must have certain inherent limitations. And thankfully, enlightenment does have certain limitations, because how is a continuous process of insight, growth, and development in life possible unless you are transcending boundaries, unless there are mental obstacles to overcome? And if knowledge is limited, then you are bound to be carrying certain blind spots, you are bound to be carrying certain mental obstacles, regardless of enlightenment or no enlightenment. So I really admire the attitude among certain Zen masters like Master Hakuin. For Hakuin, enlightenment wasn't just some ultimate peak. In his eyes, there are always peaks beyond peaks, heights beyond heights, and realizations beyond realizations. It reminds me of one of his Dharma vows. It's called the Four Vows. Beings beyond number, I vow to liberate. Endless blind passions, I vow to uproot. Dharma gates beyond measure, I vow to penetrate. The way of a Buddha, I vow to attain. Basically, those four statements. And the most striking of them for me is Dharma gates beyond measure, I vow to penetrate. And this is the case regardless of enlightenment or no enlightenment. Now, enlightenment comes by many degrees. There's many depths and degrees of enlightenment. The same is the case with concentration. The same is the case with what we call meditation. So it can mean anything. It's such a misleading word because it really refers to a diversity, a wide range of experience. It can mean anything from an initial glimpse into the original nature of the mind, which is momentary. That can provide you with a certain amount of inspiration. But like all momentary experience, perhaps a certain part of your mind will retain that memory, but that is not enough if it is going to have an enduring effect on human life. For something to have an enduring effect, we must find a permanent solution. One where you can live in communion with your true nature as an ongoing process. Even if you're going to sleep, I mean it literally. Even if you go to sleep, though you may not be in your conscious mind, you may be in the dream or dreamless sleep state, but still the undercurrent of pure consciousness which is shining forth through the windows of the mind, that silence remains undisturbed. So it is possible literally as a condition of 24 hours. I don't just mean during your waking moments in life. So it can mean anything from, enlightenment can mean anything from an initial glimpse into the original nature of the mind, which in yogic sciences, this is referred to as nirvikalpa samadhi, where all activity of the mind has come to a total stillness. The rationale of it is really, it's not so much to escape from the realm of the mind. Some people, they see this as a negative light. Why are you trying to bring your mind to a stillness. What is the problem with thought? There is no inherent problem with thought. The rationale behind this is subtract everything that can be subtracted until you discover a realm which remains, which cannot be subtracted from your experience. So if you observe your thought processes and thoughts disappear into nothingness, that is clear evidence that you cannot be your thought process. If you were your thought process, if thought disappeared, you would also disappear. But this is found not to be the case in meditation. Similarly, observe your emotions or mental impression, or perhaps even recollecting memories of the past. If you observe the content of the mind in general, and you find that certain emotions disappear, or mental impressions, yet still you remain conscious, that must be clear evidence that you cannot be your emotions or mental impressions. So the rationale is very simple and basic. Subtract everything that can be subtracted until you discover a realm that can neither be added or subtracted from your experience. And in yoga, we have always understood, it has been realized among various sages that what remains is pure consciousness itself. Consciousness is the subtlest thing, and that's also my own realization. It is the subtlest thing that one can ever become aware of in life. It's even more subtle than nothingness. Because if you are conscious of nothingness, still what is essential is the consciousness itself. Minus the consciousness, there is no nothingness, there is no universe, there is no life as you know it. And what else is animating and empowering all of your experience, except consciousness itself? So this is really a profound realization when consciousness becomes aware of the nature of its own consciousness. So this can be known either as an initial glimpse, or if there comes a radical reorganization of the brain, the mind, and the nervous system, then this can remain as a continuous communion, at least until one's dying day throughout life. And this is what is known in yogic sciences as Sahaja Samadhi. But nevertheless, even in Sahaja Samadhi, there are always peaks beyond peaks, heights beyond heights, realizations beyond realizations, and thankfully it is so. Because if there was some ultimate condition of realization, once it has been realized, everything will become frozen, almost a corpse, dead, a dead state. This is the condition of a corpse. There is no further growth that is possible. So you have stagnated. But wisdom by nature must be an evolving process. This is the energy of evolution. Once it reaches one condition of growth, it is instinctive and automatic for it to move into the next level of growth. And this is why, thankfully, there are certain mental obstacles in enlightenment. Even a Buddha once in a while has dust in his eyes. I am not the type to glorify sages and Buddhas as it has been done in many other traditions. That is really to hold them on such an unrealistic pedestal, as if they are perfect, flawless human beings. This is not only an exploitation of human integrity, but it is an unrealistic perspective. So what would be some of the obstacles for an enlightened person? Well, even among Buddhas and sages, you'll find there's a spectrum of insight. Some people have realized this so-called pure consciousness, and at the same time, on the other hand, they have declared that the truth of reality is unthinkable, beyond human comprehension. So on one hand, they say the truth of your being is consciousness. On the other hand, they're saying that the truth is unthinkable. I see this as a blind spot. And various sages have fallen into this blind spot, particularly in Advaita Vedanta, where to them this is the conclusion. It's not even said as a finger pointing to the moon or as a skillful means that the nature of reality is consciousness. They mean it not as an experience, but quite literally. If you took matter and broke it down to its original source, you'll find it is made of the same stuff of pure consciousness. To me, this is a mental projection. It's falling into the same mental projection which created the idea of a supreme being, which has created the universe. And the error is that once again you're falling into this game of attaching human attributes to a realm which is truly unthinkable. I want you to think of what it means. If truth is unthinkable, if truth is immeasurable, let's put it that way. If it is unmeasurable, it cannot be defined. If it cannot be defined, it is beyond knowledge. If it is beyond knowledge, what are you doing declaring it as pure consciousness? So therefore, even the idea of consciousness is to be abandoned. Even the idea of nothingness is to be abandoned. And if even nothingness, which is another creation of the human mind, cannot grasp exactly the truth that we are speaking of, then how much less this idea of pure consciousness? So this is an example in terms of realization. Some sages have fallen into this trap. But putting it in practical terms, even in everyday life, once in a while, it may happen very rarely, that you become entangled and attached to your experience. And in those moments, you may be forgetful of this ongoing communion that I have been talking about. But really, for certain sages and Buddhas, such experience is so fleeting, such experience is so momentary, that it can hardly be called a nuisance to human well-being. But it does represent something significant, that even in enlightenment, it has a drop of delusion. And similarly, for the so-called unenlightened, for the so-called delusional, similarly, there is a drop of enlightenment. It's perhaps no symbol in humanity expresses this better than the Taoist circle of the yin and the yang. The bright half of the circle contains a drop of darkness. The dark half of the circle contains a drop of brightness. And this is the case with everything in the creation. And the same is the case with so-called enlightenment. So my understanding is that enlightenment is really so vast that it even includes delusion. Even delusion is not excluded from it. And this is how it is possible, where your very enlightenment can have many stages of growth, many stages of integration, and life can be an ongoing process of growth.